Oh, why hello, I didn't see you there. Well, I guess I know why you're here. You want to know about the human population. Well, you see, let me tell you a thing or two about the human population.
Prior to our video, we conducted a survey in which to see what people knew of the topic at hand. 58% of our responders were female, while 42% were male. Out of 5 age groups, our largest amount of responders were 15 to 18 years in age. When asked how many people are in the world right now, the majority of responders, being 80%, answered correctly in saying 7 to 9 billion. 27% believe there are too many people in the world right now, while 43% disagreed and 29% said maybe. When asked if the population is higher in developed or developing nations, the answers were split at 41% for developed nations and 59% for developing nations. Between 1830 and 1930, the population doubled to 2 billion. 30 years later, it reached 3 billion. After 15 more years, it reached 4 billion. 12 years after that, 5 billion. 11 years later, 6 billion. Now, there's 7.29 billion people in the world.
The reason that population growth was slow in the early 1800s was from infectious diseases such as measles, smallpox, and malaria. These diseases are now curable by modern medicine, which has allowed the population to explode in recent history.
TV, toilet, cars.
These are the signs of a developed nation, where birth rates are lower as well as infant mortality because of the modernized technology we enjoy in our lives. In contrast, in countries such as El Salvador, birth rates are higher along with infant mortality because of the lack of modern technology.
What is the difference between developed and developing countries?
Well, education primarily. They're higher educated, quality of life, standard of living, expectations.
What causes there to be a higher birth rate in developing countries than in developed countries?
Well, there's better health care provided, so there's less deaths during birth, giving birth.
Do developed countries or developing countries consume more?
Probably developed countries.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. They tend to lead more extravagant lifestyles and require more things.
Understandable. I have a question for you. What causes there to be a higher birth rate in developing countries?
There was more people previously. There was a baby boom. Is that the right answer?
It's an interesting answer.
Okay, here you go. That's my answer.
Do developing countries or developed countries consume more?
Developed countries consume more
Why?
because we provide for underdeveloped countries.
Thank you
Good
so much for
answer,
your time.
good answer.
Environmental and social results of increased population include more people make higher demands on environment for energy, food, water, and resources, and this also causes us to produce more waste. More consumption also creates negative effects on the environment. For example, the average person in America places 20 times more demand on the environment than someone in, say, Bangladesh. This includes pollution and toxic waste and is associated more with people from affluent lifestyles.
Subdivide farms among the children of the next generation, or intensify cultivation of existing land to increase production per unit area. Number 2, open up land to farm. Number 3, move to cities and seek employment. Number 4, engage in illicit activities for income. Number 5, immigrate to other countries legally/illegally.
These 5 things cause a decrease in biodiversity and animal life,
more CO2 emissions in big cities. Also, these big cities cannot provide fast enough for the influx of people, causing these people to be given to live in poor conditions. There's more people going to jail along with more drug addictions. In addition to this, there are more animal extinctions. Impoverished women and children are also increasing, which puts too much economic pressure on certain nations, causing economic and social issues.
A population profile is a bar graph showing the number or proportion of people, males and females separately, at each age for a given population, done by a census. This is an example of a population profile of the United States in 2014. More people make it past the age of 60 in developed nations such as the United States than in developing nations. And we use these population profiles to project population and estimate births and deaths.
The reason that there are more elderly people in developed nations and less younger people is due to the fact that there is a low birth rate, but a lot of people live to recruitment. On the contrary, in developing nations, there's a high birth rate and less people live to recruitment, which causes there to be more young people and less old people.
Population momentum is a property whereby a rapidly growing human population may be expected to grow for 50 to 60 years after replacement fertility is reached. These are examples, the Republic of Congo and India, pictured here.
Now, developed nations have completed something that's known as the demographic transition. The demographic transition is when a country transitions from being having a high birth rate but high mortality rate to a low birth rate and low mortality rate. Now, this allows us to have more control over the population, which is the reason why we are trying to get developing nations to also complete this cycle by getting them to mimic the actions of developed
More
nations.
developing countries desire large numbers of children because of a number of factors. The first one is infant and childhood mortality, and in this graph it shows that in the darker area there's a higher mortality rate for children under the age of 5. So in the areas such as Africa and Asia, which are developing, there is a higher mortality rate. The second factor is the importance of education, and the darker areas show a higher percentage of adults that are educated, and in the lower percentages, Africa and Lower Asia, they are developing and there are less educated adults. The third factor is the status of women, which opportunities for women's education and careers are some of the things. And in the darker areas, it shows that more than 95% of girls are educated in primary school. And then in Africa and Lower Asia, again, you can see that 0 to 59% of them have been educated.
3 of the other factors that influence family size are security in one's old age, helping hands, and the availability of contraceptives.
In order to cause the shift from high to low fertility rates in poor developing countries, 5 important actions need to be taken. First, education needs to be improved in these countries, especially women and children. Second, family planning needs to improve. This includes contraceptives. Also, we need to improve health and enhance the income of these people in order to better help them. And lastly, we need to improve resource management so that these countries can mimic more of the developed nations in birth rates.
One organization that tries to promote the development of underdeveloped nations is the World Bank. They do this by giving underdeveloped nations loans and hope that they will spend their loans to industrialize their economy. One problem with this is oftentimes these nations spend all this money and don't get enough back to pay the World Bank back equally. This causes a lot of economic problems and increases the national debt. Now, the World Bank is trying to handle this problem by increasing the amount of monitoring they do of these underdeveloped nations to ensure that they spend this money more responsibly.
I'm live here reporting with Megan Town, a senior at Medina High School, and I have a few questions to ask her. Alright. What are some ideas that you have for population control?
Like to control. Well, you could go very extreme and just kill people, but I don't think that would be a very good idea. You could
do what China did and limit the number of children that people could have, which is probably more humane than just killing people.
Interesting, I agree with that. What are some ideas that you have on the population control?
Contraception and education, primarily. They, education leads to people not procreating as much.
What are some ideas that you have about population control?
Probably. I don't know. Don't other countries they like limit the amount of children that you can have?
Yes.
Not here in the USA, but that's probably the only thing
I like it. What is your moral belief on the limiting of the amount of children that someone can have?
I don't think that that's right. Like, you should be able to have as many children as you want, as long as you can like provide for them. And,
I'm here with Mrs. Blair of Medina County. All right, what are some ideas that you have for population control?
I think people should have some sort of birth control at birth, and then should they want children, need to have an interview.
Interesting. How do you think that we could solve the problems of population control?
With people to other countries.
I mean in the whole world, not just this country.
Find a new island and move them there.